wall art above my sofa has been unfinished on the wall for probably a month or two now. If you remember, I couldn't wrap the canvas all the way around the wood due to poor dimensional thinking, but problem solved, can be solved. Solution is in the future. I'm going to add a frame around this artwork, which I think will make it look a lot nicer, and will also hide my bad edges. This time I was a little bit more meticulous with my measuring. I finally got my act together today and went to the lumber store to purchase some 1x2 pine. That is what I'm going to use to create the frame. So you can get 1x2 pine from the Home Depot or Lowe's or a big box store like that, but I highly recommend going to the lumber store because look how nice this is. It's like really high quality. It's not like bowing. It's been seasoned and it's just so much nicer than what I've seen ever at the Home Depot. So yeah, it's just a little bit more expensive, and also they're like so much more attentive to you there. They'll cut it exactly to size. It's not as much of a weight. I highly recommend. If you're in the LA area, Anderson Plywood is great for this kind of work. If you're not in the LA area, I'm sure there's a great lumber store near you that would love to work with you on projects like this. So this time I actually didn't get my lumber cut exactly to size. I gave myself about a 5-inch tolerance, so got something to work with. And the reason I did that is because I'm going to do a miter cut to create a miter joint for the frame, because I think it'll look more professional than just doing like a butt joint. A miter is where you cut at 45 degrees and match the two 45-degree pieces. This is my first time ever doing this, so wish me luck. So I don't want the frame to sit so tight flush to the canvas. I want there to be like a little bit of a gap, kind of like a float frame. I'm gonna leave basically an 1/8 gap between the canvas and the frame. So now I'm gonna start with one piece, and I'm gonna cut the one piece, and then I'll cut the next piece. I'm not gonna cut them all at the same time because I don't trust myself yet on those measurements. I don't wanna botch this. So what I'm gonna do is just take my speed square and mark in pencil where my miter cut is. You don't have to do this because the miter saw will have the angle for you, but like I said, don't want to make any mistakes. So this is kind of like the dummy approach. I used the miter saw to cut 45-degree angles, one at a time. Because I was being especially careful, after each cut, I returned the board to the frame to verify the location of my next cut. After all of my miter angles were cut, I attached each corner together using Titebond 2 wood glue and used a right angle clamp to hold the boards in place while they dried. So it has been a day since I've last been working on this, and in the meantime I have glued together all 4 corners individually using the corner clamp and a Titebond Type 2 wood glue. I could only do one corner at a time because I only had one corner clamp. I need to buy more clamps, but in the meantime I'll just work slow. And then after that I went and sanded the frame with a 220 grit sandpaper. I vacuumed up all of the dust, wiped the dust off of the frame, made sure we got a pretty dust-free environment, and I am ready to move on to the next step, which is applying wood conditioner. Full disclosure, have never stained wood before, so I did a lot of research before embarking on this because I want to do a pretty good job the first time. Learn from others' mistakes. You can learn from my mistakes all the time. I'm here for you. Anyway, because I use pine, which is a soft wood, it can tend to be sort of blotchy with the stain, but one way to kind of prevent or mitigate the blotch is to apply a wood conditioner, so it already starts like absorbing the conditioner before the stain gets on the wood. So I don't know if this works or will help, but we'll give it a try. Stay tuned. Probably should set this on a surface. What am I doing? Movie magic. I used a foam brush to coat the pine boards with wood conditioner on every surface that I would be staining. Okay, so now my wood conditioner has had time to dry. In the instructions, it said to allow 30 minutes before applying stain. It's been well over 30 minutes, probably an hour and a half now, and I'm ready to get staining. Oh, and another piece of information on the instructions was to wipe off the excess conditioner before allowing it to dry. So after I, painted it on with the foam brush, I came back with a paper towel and just took off, any of the standing conditioner, so what was in the wood would absorb and the standing stuff wouldn't affect it negatively. Yeah. Anyway, staining. So I have decided to go with a Polyurethane classic wood stain in walnut. I wanted a medium or darker kind of brown color to go with other elements in the room. They had some samples at the store of this on like pine and other species of wood, so I was able to kind of get a feel for how it's going to look, but I did add the wood conditioner and I'm not sure how that's going to affect the final color of the stain. And also I will be coming back on top of it with an oil-based primer, which may also have an effect on the color of the stain. So, I'm learning here on what could change the color. I don't really care super about specifics. I just want it to be sort of in that like medium dark color range, and then I'll be happy. Not too blotchy. I just want it to look okay, That's all. Just look okay. Learning experience for all of us here. All right, let's get to staining. I used a foam brush to apply the stain to the wood. After the board was fully coated, I used a microfiber cloth to wipe off all of the excess stain. So it turns out that a staining project actually takes quite a bit of time. Who knew? If only I had read the instruction a little bit better and accounted for that. But yeah, you live and you learn, and you guys can learn from me. So yesterday, when I was applying my stain, I needed to wait 2 hours between each coat because that's what it said on the label. And I did 2 coats because I wanted my stain to be a little bit darker. You can get away with just 1, but I knew I wanted a darker stain. And then after my last coat, I needed to wait 8 hours for it to cure overnight. So this morning, I came back ready to apply my top coat, and I realized the original top coat I had purchased was water-based. I don't know if you remember the science experiment as kids where you mix oil and water in the same container and they don't mix together, they stay separated. So generally when you're painting or I guess staining, you want to keep in the same family. Your primer, your paint, and your top coat should all either be water-based or all oil-based. You don't want to mix water-based and oil-based projects because, like the science experiment, they don't mix very well. You can put them together, but you want to wait a long time between coats, and time is the essence. I don't want to wait anymore, so I ran off to the hardware store and I purchased this oil-modified polyurethane by Minwax. So I switched my brands up here, but it should be fine because this is actually compatible with the stain that I used. So I started applying this morning and I have put on 2 coats already. Now, in between coats, you need to sand lightly with a 220 grit fine sandpaper just to rough up the surface a little bit so that the top coat can adhere to the surface underneath it. You don't have to go really hard and bear down, just a light sanding, and this applies when you're putting a top coat or another layer of paint on anything. Just rough it up a little bit so that the paint or the top coat, whatever it is, can stick to the surface. Now, I have applied 2 coats, and per the instructions on the bottle, I need to apply 3 and then wait 24 hours before messing with it anymore. So I will let this cure overnight, and then I guess I will finish this project sometime over the weekend. Let's get to coating. After lightly sanding, I used a foam brush to apply the polyurethane top coat. And we're back! So it's been more than a day. It's been a couple of days because I had some kitchen pests or just house pests that I had to deal with. So I am ready to get this thing off my floor and up onto the wall. Next comes attaching the canvas to the frame. Now, this is how I want the frame to look around the canvas when it's up on the wall. However, in order to attach the canvas for the frame, I'm actually going to need to flip the entire thing upside down so I can attach it from behind. I just wanted to make sure that I like the look of it. One thing I did was there's a couple of edges that aren't the prettiest with staining, so I wanted to make sure that that was in the lesser viewed location. For example, what's going to be the top of the frame, I kind of had a staining like not so great there, so I figure if it's on top, no one's gonna see it, versus the bottom, which is an edge which will be viewable from people walking around or sitting on the sofa. But the top, unless they're on a ladder looking down, I don't think anyone's gonna know. In order to join the inner tapestry frame to the outer frame that I just made, I need to attach the 2 pieces together from the back. So I purchased from the hardware store this mending plate that I'm going to use to attach the outer frame to the inner frame in all 4 corners. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is mark the center point of my screw location. I'm using the screws that came with the mending plate. So the first thing I'm going to do is drill a pilot hole at each of my screw locations. So whenever you screw into wood, you don't want to start by just driving the screw in there. Instead, you want to take a drill bit that is a little bit smaller than the screw you're using and drill a pilot hole. So what that does is creates a guide or a small little hole that you're then going to drive the screw into. Now, a general rule of thumb is to use a drill bit that is the size of the screw without the threading on it. However, since this is a very thin piece of wood, I'm actually going to use a even smaller bit to create that first hole, and then I'll come in with a slightly wider drill bit, and then I will drive in the screw. And that's just because I'm trying to prevent from cracking the wood, and if you go in with a really big bit, it's going to create like a rotational force on the wood, and it might just, you know, split it. So it helps if you start really small and then work your way larger. I'm sure that the structural engineers will laugh at me for the way that I just stated that. However, don't split your wood, so always drill a pilot hole. Okay, so that's done now. It was honestly not very enjoyable for me. I broke a bit, so I'm kind of upset. Also, so I said earlier about how you want to make sure you pre-drill a hole before you drive the screw in. I honestly don't think I have the physical strength to be able to just drive a screw into wood anyway. I have to pre-drill. So that's another thing. The first plate I actually installed upside down, but there's no going back now. I'm not gonna undo it and flip it over. If it bothers me significantly later, then I'll change it then. But in the meantime, I'm ready to be done with this. Let's get it on the wall.